Hey everyone, how are you? And Happy New Year. This is Jenna Matlin, and I am kind of switching some things up. I'm not going to have so many regularly scheduled things, but I will be uploading things as I have time to share them with you. And if you happen to be on live with me and you want to hang out, cool. If not, cool. However, this needs to go for you and with you. But today I really wanted, and I was in the space to do a global Grand Tableau reading. I did one of these last year, and I thought it'd be a really good idea to do it again this year. Using Lenormand, Lenormand is 36 cards. It's a little different than tarot. It's more keeping to kind of like tea leaf readings. I pulled it out asking, what is the global prediction? What is going to happen in the world? And I'm going to share with you in a moment what I'm seeing. And the deck I'm using, I actually picked this up at Barnes & Noble not too long ago. It's just such a super cute little book, but it was called the Cute Little Lenormand. And believe me when I tell you that I really bought it because of this little unicorn character in Lenormand. And so in the back, it even had its own deck. So super cute. I could not resist it. And this is the deck that I'm going to be using in the Grand Tableau. So let me get to it. Okay, so here is the Grand Tableau. It is a 36 card spread, as I mentioned. And what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do this is I'm going to signify cards, meaning that some of these cards, I am, as I was shuffling, I was thinking about the card and what I wanted that card to represent. And so I have a few things in here, especially with the country stuff that I'm going to get into. And the first thing I want to bring to your attention, and I've got like a cute pen, so this comes a little easier. All the way down here is the mice. And for me, mice is like COVID, because obviously that's been the thing we've been dealing with. And I wanted to take a look at it and see what would the cards wanted to say around that. So above mice, we have how you read Lenormand it's omnidirectional. It's not just one way like you would read a tarot deck. But let me get into this situation here. So we have mice, dog, moon, and heart. Very interesting and largely very positive cards above it. That's a good sign. That means that it's more or less being managed or handled or on its way out, even with the new variations happening. And I also think that there are some new and better, even better protocols that are coming up in trials. And I'm not just talking about vaccines, but also protocols for when one does get sick, and then them getting better more quickly. So I do see that. When I look at COVID along kind of through the year, which is this whole kind of row here, we have mice, and that card there is ring. Then you have tower, and then the child and key. Very interesting. So ring is often like agreement or contract. You have tower, which is like education or learning. It can also mean like bureaucratic red tape. And then you have child and key. Now that together is pretty profound. Child and key together often means like there is like some kind of breakthrough process, some kind of like breakthrough, maybe a new vaccine or even a cure once you get it. I'm not exactly certain. And I do feel like this probably has to do with unlocking the issues around long COVID. So we're going to see some breakthroughs. And not only just with COVID, but the technology that has basically been moonshot because of COVID. We're going to see some really interesting and innovative like medical interventions for other problems next year. Really, really big year and a very positive year when it comes to with medical breakthroughs. It's interesting here because we have the scythe down here, and the scythe is pointing at key. So the way Lenormand works, we often want to look at like where is the needle pointing, the edge of the scythe. It's pointing towards key, and key is the key to the city, that which unlocks. So I do feel that it is kind of talking more about using needles. So like, some kind of immunotherapies or some kind of vaccine yet again, but it's something injected. And that is part of this whole process we're seeing here. Interestingly, though, we do have rider and mountain, which means that there is going to be something that's going to like come up out of this that may need more trials. Or access to it is limited for whatever reason. More of the same is what I'm kind of seeing in this reading here. But that's pretty much what I'm seeing with COVID. Let's see here. Now, of course, the thing very much on my mind is the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. A lot of us are thinking about that. And so interestingly, though, I did use the scythe as the card for Ukraine. Hey, Ukraine, like the flag of Ukraine is yellow and blue to signify the waves of grain. And Ukraine is often known as the breadbasket of, Eurasia in many ways. So to me, the scythe was such a clear indicator. So when I look at Ukraine and I look at the column here, I'm seeing very interesting information. So we have clouds down here. Clouds aren't they're not a great card. Clouds is like ongoing confusion and lack of clarity. And then there is sun, and then stork, and then fox. Wow. Let me talk about the other aspect of this, and then I'm going to tell you what I think that means. So, of course, the other country I want to look at is Russia. And so for me in Lenormand, Russia is often the bear. And so we have the bear here. Now you can see bear and scythe, they're pretty freaking close to one another. When I look at bear across, I have stork and the ways or crossroads, and then snake. And then I feel very strongly that many, many people in Russia, maybe even including Putin himself, who knows, really wants this to be over. But they are working to be able to make it over without feeling like a loss. So I think there's some heavy negotiations going on about the land, the ceded land, that has a lot of ethnic Russians in Ukraine, like to the east. And I feel like that's what they're wanting. And Ukraine doesn't want to give it up. And Ukraine is wondering how do we navigate or negotiate this process without giving this land up. And they're working very hard to be very clever about the kind of package deal they want to submit to Russia. And we see that up here. We have the fox, and the fox's cleverness or trying to strike up some kind of non-obvious but very clever solution to the problem at hand. I don't love that you also have the rider and mountain with scythe, which tells me that this conflict could slow down a bit, but it does feel like it is going to continue for a little while, definitely through at least spring at the earliest, perhaps longer. Now, that's like kind of Ukraine and then Russia, but we can't talk about these two countries without also talking about the U.S. And so for me, I always signify stars for the U.S., like stars and stripes, 50 stars on the flag, that kind of thing, Star-Spangled Banner. And so there's stars, and then there's the scythe for Ukraine. So they're also quite close. But here's the interesting thing. I'm looking at these two cards here. We have clouds and we have tower. So in Lenormand, there is a technique that's called the meeting points method. So you look at the card that the two trajectories cross over. So Scythe, Ukraine, and Stars, the US, both, they meet at clouds and tower. This is very interesting to me because the tower is bureaucracy and clouds. So Ukraine wants the US to give more and to give more quickly and more easily, and is trying to make the process faster, which the US cannot deliver as quickly as they would like. Tower is bureaucratic red tape, causing clouds and confusion. So that is a piece to all of this. Now, when I look at the U.S. in general, in relation, to Ukraine, I also want to look at the U.S. is in the house called Key. So in Lenormand, you have each of the cards, and then you have the native house of each card. So Stars is in the house of Key. And if you remember from earlier, Key is like, this is the solution and this is the answer. So of course, how US decides to play this proxy war with Russia, with poor Ukraine as the chess board for all of this, is really part of it, and is going to be the solution, even though Ukraine is trying to negotiate on their own, for how do we get this war to end. And in some ways, I think the U.S. has made it more difficult for the Ukraine in that negotiation process, as much as the U.S. has helped Ukraine. And that's the energy I'm seeing in the reading, though that's not what I hear on the news. So I'm also going to look at Russia. So we have Russia the bear. And then I'm going to look at the meeting points between Russia and the U.S. Yeah, they're also not negotiating big time. So this card here, the meeting points, is letter. Letter is information coming back and forth. So I think like Russia is negotiating with America as much as Russia is negotiating with Ukraine, and vice versa. And then you have ship here, which is Russia really wants American influence out of this, but it's not going to happen. And, so there feels like there's a bit of an impasse that's going to take some time to work its way out, is what I see here. When I look at Russia overall, we have anchor and key and ship. As much as the sanctions have been enforced on Russia, I really think that economically they're doing okay. And I have a feeling it has to do with the oil that they sell. They're just now selling it to different people. And that, we're not in a danger zone with them just yet. When I look at, we have the partner here, and then we have the querent. Normally when I do these readings for individuals, it would talk about individuals. But what I feel when I look at that is some kind of power play, some subtle power play happening within Russia itself. It could be Putin and another faction or another factor. How friendly or unfriendly they are to one another, I'm not sure. But there's definitely a sense of tension there. Especially with book between them. They're really, someone is trying to grab control of the narrative is what I'm seeing. But it's done in a super subtle kind of way. So that's what I see for Russia. For the US, we have stars. We have tree, ship, and clouds. I think the American economy is getting back on track, but it's kind of slow with different pieces, slow to develop. I still think there are going to be shipping issues with China, with that ship and clouds, and also supply chain. Like there's going to be some big shifts here. I think we cannot have business be as it was. And I think that's part of what's driving the inflation in the US and will continue to do so. With the tree there, trees like things slow to shift, slow to change. You also have above the US, you have the tower, garden, letter, and fish. Tower, garden, letter, and fish. Very interesting. So tower, again, is government. You also have garden. These are like Democratic parties. Letter and fish, just a lot of money changing hands, a lot of money being invested in people for political shifts and political changes. But like nothing that feels like it's like absolutely like critical either way. There's a feeling of things ramping up when I look at the reading through 2023. Garden, letter, and fish. Like again, fish is also like a money. So I think it could also just talk about the general economy forecast slowly getting better, less swings, more of a slower kind of upward trend. And that is a piece in all of this. It's interesting to me. So in Lenormand, when you have cards that are like on the edges here, like stars, you don't get these cards here. So there's almost like the information is not being made available at this time. So there's a lot of things still up in the air for the US that feels like we can't call it necessarily within the context of the reading because of where the star placement is. I also feel like I want to look at garden. Because for me, garden is environment. And I know a lot of us are really worried about climate change and what's going on with climate change and what's going to happen next year. So I want to target the garden and the garden. And so what we have is like dog and clover touching garden. And then you have whips, anchor, sun, birds, and lilies. I feel like there really is the feeling of starting to get what's the word I'm looking for? Like a turning point with climate. And also like we really it's just now no longer economically feasible or smart to continue to ignore these things, even if you are more of a conservative company or organization. That is what I see here with dog and clover. It does look like some things are going to shift climate-wise, or protections for climate that are going to be just in time is the feeling I get from that. With whips and anchor and sun, expect a hot year, an annoyingly hot year. I feel that we are within this kind of spun up energy of the climate and the temperature. And we're really going to feel its effects next year. There's going to be a lot of like different things kind of like influencing each other and connecting to make it extraordinarily clear we cannot continue. And as uncomfortable as that is, I think that's part of the reason why we're going to see this kind of turning point. We've reached peak of ignorance in this. So the other country I wanted to mention, and yeah, let me see. I will look for earthquakes in Mexico, but let me look at lilies, which is what I associated with China, because China is a big world player. China is undergoing some shifts that could be very interesting to watch, with mountain right below them, and then snake and house, very interesting. Snake and house, for me, house is like Communist Party, and then snake, like there is some rumblings to overturn or shift. It is not, no one is happy, and it's not overt yet, but snake is like almost like a coup, possibly. That's a very strong word. I don't know if that's the word I want to use 100%, but something like that, very quietly in the party. We have kind of coffin very close to all of this. Coffin is endings and changes, and crossroads, endings and changes. And then we have birds. Birds is like gossip and chitter chatter. Interestingly, birds is in the house of rats. So gossip or chitter chatter that is undermining the status quo in China. So we're going to see a lot of shifts happening in China, I think, in this upcoming year. I don't know how much those outside of China, hear about it, but I do see that for China ahead. Mexico. Yeah, you know what I'll do is I'll signify the cross for Mexico for me. And so what I'm seeing here is I'm getting ring and clover bouquet. I'm getting heart and fish, book, the partner, fox, coffin, and house. There could be some a difficult, maybe one larger earthquake. Overall, I feel that coffin and that fox there. When I read the column for Mexico, there's a lot of positive cards actually. So more noise than affect. These earthquakes is what I'm kind of seeing here with ring, clover, and bouquet. It feels like things are going to be more or less okay in that to that vein. What else do I have here? Let me take a look and see if anything is showing up that's really speaking to me. This is interesting. If I read cross not as a global, like a country, but just as its own thing, and I actually saw this in an earlier reading I did for a podcast, there's some kind of very interesting spiritual shift that's going to happen for some people. There could be like a new spiritual leader that people just really feel connected with, someone who is just really has a way of organizing a lot of people to connect to love. This person is incredibly charismatic. This person isn't bad on the eyes. And very persuasive writer. I'm not sure who this is. At this point, it looks like a positive in the influence, but the influence is more with individuals than with like global organizations. But I did see that before, like something around spirituality and someone really helping people connect with the brighter, the light side of all of that. So I do want to leave that with you. A book, partner, fox, coffin, home. Issues we're still going to continue with global real estate, with the house there as well. House is actually sitting in the house of coffin with the card of coffin right next to it. Ooh, when you have a double whammy like that, that's just adding a lot of energy to the prediction. So, if you're looking for housing, it just doesn't look like it's going to ease up quickly enough for this year. So play more careful with this. If you're like, I'm waiting for the housing market to crash so I can buy my first house, I don't think that's going to happen. So when I see coffin and house, it's not that the housing market is going to crash. It's more like it feels locked up. It doesn't feel free to move many places. And that feels like a very strong prediction for the year. Let me see here. Oh, that's nice. So in terms of like entertainment, movies, books, it's a good year. When I look at moon is often like fame or like how people are seeing you. And I see like moon, bouquet, and letter. That just talks about some real creative projects that are going to be coming up. Again, it could be book, movies, TV shows, but some really, really good quality stuff that people are going to really like is going to come on, especially like next year or this year. 2023 is going to be a good entertainment year. And a good spiritual and philosophical year. A lot of good content coming for people. Let's see here. And then that was all Russia. Let me see here. Dog, clover, garden. I talked about that with the climate. Talked about mice with COVID. If you are live and you're listening, if you have like a global question you want me to look for in this reading, I would be happy to do so. The writer, birds, ways, and coffin. Oh, that's interesting. So when I look at this as well, so writer, birds is like news. Like it could literally mean Twitter. Sometimes Lenormand is so funny like that. It can literally mean like Twitter, like birds. But writer, birds, crossroads, and coffin, it's possible we may see like the end of Twitter this year, or some major revamp or shift of a social media platform. I mean, it could be TikTok as well. I don't know. I'm just saying like there's an on the nose prediction here, but it may not be on the nose, but it is something about where people, there's a social aspect with crossroads and coffin above it. I am seeing like something is going to end, or access is going to end in some significant way for one of these platforms. That's really interesting. And that's the cool thing about Lenormand. Like you can just kind of keep playing with it, and like new things will come to you, even though you don't pull any new cards. You just keep looking at what you have, and then new things will arise as you're working through it. So that's interesting with the platforms. Okay, so I'm going to also look at, when I look at mice and ring, like if I take it out of the context of like COVID, and we want to get political in the US because Tower is right above stars, and I'm looking at mice and ring. So ring is agreement, ring is contract. Ring can also mean party nomination. And mice, I really believe, and I feel for like really, it's true for the Republicans, also could be true for the Democrats, that both parties want younger people and like a young, fresh energy to start running for office. It feels like it's probably for both, but there's a desire and a hunger to really start, bringing the youngins in, getting them to like help us fix this mess that we've created. Sorry, young people. And so I do feel that. With mice, though, I don't know how effective those desires will pan out, because in Lenormand, mice is like anything taking away from the integrity of something. It's just like, we want to, but it feels like, the rug is being pulled out from under us, or we don't have all the pieces we need to really make it clear. But I think that's really interesting to look at. What else do we have? Oh, fascinating. So I believe that there's going to be something that happens to a child, to a minor, something tragic or harmful that will then really shape and change some laws for those children or minors. This could be trafficking. This could be a whole kind, all kinds of stuff. But that's what I see here. I have child and whip. I don't love that combination. Like something of harm coming to the child having some difficulties. And then tree, like it's slow to be found or slow to be found out. Like the querent is like people involved. And then you have the book. And book is sitting in the house of house. So for me, that could be laws enacted, some shifts to protect some weird loophole, that one particular instance with this one particular child becomes kind of the vanguard for change for that. I don't know any more than that. Sometimes tree is also health related. So it even could be like access to care, access to like affirming, access to health, and access to mental health. It could mean that as well. So I don't want to. Thing about me in readings is I'm as specific as I feel confident in. But if I'm not, I will give a few examples because I don't want to nail something that doesn't feel like it's a nail just yet, but something in that area or theme is what I see here. Let me see what else we have. Yeah, it's going to be a hot year, guys. And I think we're going to see more climate refugees or people moving because of climate or pressures to immigrate because of climate. I do see that because we have like the sun, the stork, and the fox. Immigration is still major on the table for all northern countries that are not as yet impacted by climate change. I do see that as coming up even more loudly next year. So that is what I see, just kind of off the cuff. If you're live and if you have a global question and you want to pop it in the chat box, I will take a look and see if I can find it. So sometimes like Lenormand is the only barrier of Lenormand has to do with what I can think of in the moment to look for. So that's what I've got. A lot of stuff around climate change in the year, like really a lot. But that's about it. And of course, I mean, there's a ton of things happening in the world. This is just what is coming up for me as I'm looking at the spread. So if y'all just lurk in and you don't have a question, then we're pretty much done. That is the Grand Tableau, the Global Grand Tableau. I also do Grand Tableaus as a reading for individuals. So if that sounds very interesting and you want to get one, you just go to my website, which is my name, jennamatlin.com, and book yourself with me. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting year coming up. From a tarot and numerological perspective, we are in a 7-year, which is Chariot. So to see like climate accelerations of that nature makes a lot of sense to me. So for you as individuals, make sure that you are protecting yourself from the climate changes as much as you possibly can. And keep your eye on these trends coming out. Download your social media content if you're worried about it being poof, gone. So that's about it. If you are on my newsletter, you can also find that or subscribe. Then you'll just know. I think right now, because I'm working on another book proposal, I need to be able to pop in and hang out with you guys when I have a moment. But I will be announcing things as they come up. So with that being said, I wish you a very healthy, blessed, beautiful, and peaceful start of your 2023. I'm Jenna Matlin, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.